Henry was laid to rest in a vault in the Lady Chapel. It had been designed in the Renaissance style by an Italian sculptor named Pietro Torrigiano. A random fact I read about him on Tony Rich's blog: he's apparently famous for having broken Michelangelo's nose during a fight while they trained together when they were young. Elizabeth of York shares the tomb with him, his wife, and there's a black marble base decorated with medallions representing the Virgin Mary and Henry's patron saints. There's also coats of arms and cherubs and seated angels and carvings, all of that. The heads of the effigies carried at their funerals still survive in the Abbey collection. Henry's is actually very famous. If you look up the images, I'll stick some in the show notes. It looks very, very lifelike and probably done from a death mask. The bodies of the funeral effigies were actually damaged during World War II. The inscriptions on the tomb say, "Here lies Henry VII of that name, formerly King of England, son of Edmund, Earl of Richmond. He was created king on August 22nd, and immediately afterwards, on October 30th, he was crowned at Westminster in the year of our Lord 1485. He died subsequently on April 21st in the 53rd year of his age. He reigned 23 years and 8 months, less 1 day." Around the edge of the tomb, it's also written, "Here is situated Henry VII, the glory of all of the kings who lived in his time by reason of his intellect, his riches, and the fame of his exploits, to which were added the gifts of bountiful nature, a distinguished brow, an august face, an heroic statue. Joined to him, his sweet wife was very pretty, chaste, and fruitful. They were parents happy in their offspring, to whom, land of England, you owe Henry VIII. Speaking of Henry VIII, Henry VIII was buried in February of 1547 in St. George's Chapel at Windsor Castle. Henry had died 20 days before at Whitehall Palace. During the week before his interment, his body had been moved to Windsor via the former Abbey Church at Syon Park. The name for the vehicle that we call a hearse today was actually called a chariot in the 16th century. Henry's chariot had many wheels. It was a wagon that was covered with black velvet. There were his banners. There were 8 horses, and those horses were ridden by 8 children. And apparently the lead that was used to encase Henry's embalmed corpse weighed more than half a ton by itself, so the whole thing would have been incredibly heavy. The roads had to be widened and repaved just to bear the weight of the hearse or chariot. The chariot carried his coffin on the top, and then there was his effigy. The effigy was carved from wood and wax. It was dressed in the robes, the very expensive robes he would have had. It also wore the imperial crown on its head. It was so very valuable that when the cortege stopped at Syon, it was placed under guard. And unfortunately, it has not survived to this day. There actually was something called a hearse. Of course, like I said, what we know as a hearse was not a hearse. That was the chariot. But there was something called a hearse, and that was this huge wax temporary canopy. And that was where the coffin and the effigy would rest while they were lying in state. So the Historic Royal Palace's blog has some really good information about these hearses. They were surrounded by thousands of burning candles. I'm really not sure how that would have worked being wax, but there you go. They were hung with black and gold fabrics, lots of ornamentation and sculptures. So they were really decorated to look like almost like cathedrals with all of this ornamentation around them.